Say hello, chat. We are live. We are here with warbossfitz for our 40k rant. It is Tuesday today when this comes out, but right now it's Sunday, and we're going to discuss what would get you back into Warhammer 40,000 if you've left, or if you're lapsing away from the hobby. What would bring you back and keep you enthused? I did a video on this maybe a year ago now, Warboss, I think it was. And warbossfitz actually threw up a comment saying, hey, you need to remake this. It's been a long time. Like, you need to do this again. Has anything changed? And I said, well, I will if you join me. I will do. We'll do it on a Sunday live. And he said, yeah, I'll call your bluff. I'll come on and do that. I have chat here, so we're going to be... you can actually see chat on the screen. Well, at least not people's names, what they're saying. You should be able to see that. And we're going to be going into that main question. What would bring you back into 40k? So, first things first, alright. Somebody mentioned 3D printing, and I know warbossfitz, you mentioned that before. We may as well start there, because 3D printing has been something that a lot of people are saying is keeping them away from coming back to 40k. Not so much, you know, getting them to come back, but actually saying, no, I don't need it anymore, right? Would you say we're at that point, or would you say we're nowhere near that at the moment?
I would absolutely say we're at that point. And 3D printing, it seems to fall right into my wheelhouse. So, yeah, there is no chance that I would ever buy another GW model again.
Wow. Okay. Do you want to explain to the future people? I know people in the chat know who you are, but who are you, warbossfitz? What do you do? And why is 3D printing important to you?
Well, okay, hi everybody, I'm warbossfitz. I run the warbossfitz channel. We do one-page rules on the channel, and every week I 3D print and paint another army for one-page rules. So I've been doing it for, 2, maybe 3 years now, and yeah, every week it's got to a point where we just spin a random wheel at the end of every episode to find out what the next army is going to be, and then I print that and then play a game with it on screen.
Oh yeah, okay. So you would never buy another 40k model ever again? Now, is that because of the prices, or is that because you've got a better alternative?
Well, number one, it's because of the prices. I have some notes and I have some stuff up that can show how ridiculous GW has gotten.
Yeah, dive in, man. Go for it.
Okay, so, well, okay, let's start talking about 3D printing. Everyone goes, okay, 3D printers are expensive. Well, on my screen here, I can go to Amazon and I can look up 3D printers. And what I found here is looking at 3D printers on Amazon, they actually have something like a sponsored deal. You can get an Anycubic Mono 4 resin 3D printer for $169.99. So $170. I don't know what that transfers over into.
Probably £135 there or thereabouts, right. I'd say.
So £135. And then I pop over to the Games Workshop website and looking specifically at Space Marines, because that's normally where everyone starts. Combat Patrol Space Marines, $168.
Right. Yeah. Do you think, in terms of 3D printing, this is me anyway, the main thing that keeps a lot of people that I know away from 3D printing is the fear of getting it wrong, is the fear of having this, £150, $200 paperweight, basically because they don't know how to use it. How easy would you say it is these days to get results that are similar to Games Workshop? I mean, I'm talking to Minimaker all the time. Really cool dude is Shemek, really good business, and he runs an entire business on printing really cool models, really cool things. But even he says, yeah, it's so easy. Like, I don't even know, I've got a business here doing really well, but like, everyone should be able to do this. It's not out of anyone's reach, you know what I mean? But that's him. Like, he's really good at 3D printing. Like, how easy would you say it is to print stuff that is GW quality, or at least approaching GW quality?
Well, a lot of the stuff, like I have a lot of friends that I've introduced to 3D printing, and a lot of them they're scared to get into it. They don't want to break stuff. But normally, what it just takes is me going over to their house and just showing them how easy some of the newer machines are to set up. Like, some of them auto level themselves for you, and there's a lot of safety features in those that will stop the machine from destroying itself. So
Okay.
so a lot of like what people have been scared of in the past, like when I started with 3D printing, like you could accidentally just destroy your screen, just a lapse of judgment. But now they have stops against that. There's pressure sensors, there's overflow sensors, there's self-leveling. Like I said, things right now are so easy. I have a friend I'm going over to this weekend that I'm setting up his machine for him, and I looked up his machine. All I got to do is plug it in and hit play.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a. It sounds so. Somebody, I think Shemek said this before as well. He was like, "Hey, have you ever built a PC?" And I said, "Yes, it broke, but yes, I did." And he said, "Well, 3D printing is about 10 times easier than building a PC, as an equivalent." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's about 10 times easier. You can't poison yourself with a PC, of course, but that's neither here nor there. Stupid Head says, 3D printing is kind of expensive to maintain, though. I'm not sure if that's worth it than just buying a standard kit. What do you say to that?
By maintaining, do you mean like the actual like post processing?
I think it means cleaning, maintenance, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, the cleaning. This is just what I do. This is not what everyone else does. A lot of people use like alcohol and they use a bath for a half hour. During the pandemic, alcohol was hard to get a hold of because everyone was making the hand sanitizers and stuff out of it. I switched over to acetone, and for me, acetone is $20 a gallon, and I have two containers. I dunk them in one container for 30 seconds, dunk them in the second container for 30 seconds, throw them in a box, and then I have a $10 UV light that I turn on that will cure the models there. And then after that, just dump them on the table. They're ready to go.
That sounds awesome. I think, and some of the qualities that I've been getting from Minimaker, I mean, it's just, it kind of makes me feel silly for paying Games Workshop prices. You know what I mean? Like sometimes. But, it is what it is. But so we've covered the fact that 3D printing is, by and large, cheaper than what we get out of Games Workshop. At least when you look at the quality that you get from Games Workshop now, it's covered in mold lines. I'll be honest, I've ordered many things from Minimaker. I've not seen one mold line yet. Now, Shemek, the guy who runs it, tells me there are no mold lines. I'm still convinced that he rubs them off before I see them, because I might get special treatment or something. But like, I've not seen one yet.
Well, just because it is what it is, it's printing the model from nothing. There's not going to be mold lines. What you might get is support lines, the little things that hold them onto the plate itself. Sometimes those take a little bit of finagling to get off, and sometimes they're in tight spaces. And then maybe if you have a weird orientation on the model, you might get layer lines that you'll see as the machine steps up. You'll get like the individual pixels you'll see. But you could switch that around, like you can change the way the model's on the plate so that you won't get layer lines. And a lot of the people that do the pre-supported stuff, they've already taken that into account for you, so there's nothing you need to do there.
Right, okay. That's cool. So a lot of people are talking about older models too, like, maybe the only thing, like Chris has just said, maybe the only thing he would get from Games Workshop is older Games Workshop models, things that you can't get through 3D printing. A big one would be Mark 6, Mark 7 Marines, right? The guys from 7th edition. You wouldn't be able to really get them 3D printed. I think that would be a good counterpoint. I don't think there's anything we can say to that. But if that's what you want, then, you are. I think you're kind of in the minority if you're looking at really old Games Workshop models, But anyway, let's move on to the next point. Matthias, he says, I work at a store and a bunch of old GW stuff came up for pre-order at our distributors. Even with my discount, I just can't justify the cost. Yeah, yes. Kriegsman on vacation says, if you have a friend with a 3D printer or know a hobby store owner with one, I have, then the cost of your hobby drops sharply. I can understand that as well. One sec, I've just had a... Oh, I just took a drink and went down the wrong way. One sec. Grown man choked to death on Pepsi Max.
Yeah, watch out for that. They'll get you.
Yeah. Matthias, he says, yes, an old venerable dreadnought, Land Raider Crusader, and more were ordered. Okay. Michigan Yankee says, many of us do not have the room for a 3D printer. That is another hurdle for a 3D printer. That's a good point. A lot of people, I'm thinking Fitz as well. You know, you will have space in the States to have these pieces of machinery in your house. In the UK, our houses are generally quite smaller. You know, our properties are smaller. And so unless you have an allotment or a shed that you're willing to keep it in, or a garage, you know, you're not really going to have space to do it. That's another good point. Minding Bat says, I got a 3D printer off my friend, but in excitement, after printing my first models, I forgot to empty the leftover resin.
Oh yeah, that a lot of the covers they do UV block with the cover. So like if you left the cover off with the resin like somehow close to a window, yeah, you're gonna brick everything that's in the vat. But at that point, just buy a new vat. They're nowhere near the cost of a full machine. You're talking $30 maybe.
So Mr. Awesome said something really cool. He said, I would love it if the Interrex was to come back to 40k. That's something else that I want to explore here. Is that maybe if, you know, we have something new coming into 40k, maybe that would pull people back. Maybe that would actually start to change the way people view 40k as a thing. Do you think that's something that you could do? I know something like, you know, 3D printing could obviously help with stuff like that. But in terms of that, what kind of a faction would you like to see come back to 40k to get you into it? Or do you think it's basically we've reached the terminal velocity where the factions that are there are the most appealing ones that are ever going to be in there, and we just need to move on from there?
Well, the main reason why I'm not in 40k anymore is just how complicated the rules got. Well, not complicated, though. They got complicated for no real reason. So if they did bring out a new army for 40k or a new faction and it was really cool, I would find a way to play that like in one-page rules rather than going back to Games Workshop and having to slog through that again.
That's so interesting. That's so because a lot of people say the authenticity of playing Games Workshop's game is what kind of, you know, makes them tick. It what makes things go. Do you know what I mean? So you would not absolutely never come back, even if let's say I took a faction out of Fitz's head. Right, here you go. Right, let's do like Uber Mecha Orcs or whatever. Right, and they say, right, here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, we got this massive army coming in. It's Gazgul's boys. We're doing a completely new army, a completely new faction of orcs just for them. They're going to be Primara size, huge dudes, really well detailed, and their lore and rules are really simple. You know, they're like a throwback faction. Would that be something that would get you back into 40k? Or would you think you'd still be staunch and say, no, I can play that in one-page rules?
No, because I think I've already made that army in one-page rules. It's just a matter of finding the files that I want to print them. And I'll tell you what, the way that 3D printing has kind of exploded over the last, 3, 4, 5 years, you can go over to like My Mini Factory and just search all kinds of stuff, and there are things there that honestly, that's where I get 90% of my inspiration. I'll go to My Mini Factory and say, okay, I'm looking for something with X. Like, say I'm looking for mecha orcs. I just go there and type in orc mechs, and there'll be hundreds of things that will pop up.
There's somebody just said something really interesting there in the chat. Warvane said, Mortarion from Games Workshop is $170, but from Minimaker he's like 50. And you'll see as well, like the Minimaker one, in my opinion, is better. And I'm not just saying that, oh, that's all crap on Games Workshop. That's not it. Games Workshop have some amazing models that I really like, but this is not one of them. Like the Mortarion in let me just see if I can find him. He just looks amazing. He absolutely looks brilliant. And you've still got Slaanesh guys in Minimaker who actually have electric guitars. I mean, what more do you want? Like, it's all there for you, man.
Right. I had a moment when I was doing the Giants army last year. I was just trying to figure out what the names of the Giants were from GW, so I could cross-reference to figure out what kind of files were what. Mm-hmm. And I looked up the Gatebreaker Mega Gargant. That thing is $215.
Holy shit. Yes.
I absolutely did a spit take when I saw that. When there's no way.
Like, how that's like a down payment on a car. That's like,
Yeah, right.
you know. So Durdu says Exodites will make some of us poor if they ever came out. They are elves on dinosaurs. How could you not love them? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but I think what Fitz is trying to say is if you have access to one of these places where you can get these STL files and things like that, you can actually, you know, shop without paying anything. Go, how much? Well, how much resin do I have? Right, I've got, okay. There's $20 in resin. I'll buy the file for what, $30, $40, whatever it is, if it's that, right? And then there we go. I've got my model ready to go. You won't even use all that resin either. You'll hardly use any of that resin. Kriegsman says, "I've seen the cost of making a Toon King's army I want with third-party models. Let me tell you, I haven't got past 120 euros, and it's 2,000 points. Yeah, I think a lot of people mistrust third-party things because they see the price and they go, it can't be as good as Games Workshop. It can't. You know what I mean?
While you were looking for that, I went to another website called Yegi.com. It's like the Google for 3D printing, where you can put stuff in there. And I looked up Eldar Exodites, and here we are, $10 for a T-Rex and Raptor mount for Exiled Guardian Eldar Space Elves.
Hell yeah. Chris says, Damned Legion says, "Morning North, every 40k purchase in New Zealand is a down payment for a house." Fair enough. Chris says, "North, I was talking with Matthias, another member, but a lot of us really like the old models, 3rd and 4th edition 40k, the 5th to 7th fantasy. There are a lot of us who grew up as kids in those editions. That is something else. This is the sticking point for 3D printing and people wanting to stay away from Games Workshop because they like 3D printing. You can't access nostalgia. That's the one thing I don't think 3D printing can do, right? If you've got that model, like the old Wraith Lord model, the metal one from Games Workshop, I have 3 of those and I'll never sell them. And if I can find another one to do 4 of them, I will do. I'll go buy it, you know, as a one-off treat to myself, because it's us indulging in nostalgia. It's indulging in the good old days where you'd go into Games Workshop and you'd look up to the staff and think, oh man, these guys are so cool. You'd have all of your models on there. You'd have the weird rando nerds you'd run into at Games Workshop, right? As a kid, you don't really meet these dudes at school, you know, but then you go and see them in the wild, and you can talk to a grown man about like what Gaskell's up to with Ragnar Blackmane, or you know what the hell's going on with the Tau right now and things like that, and have these discussions. That's something that I don't think 3D printing can give you. Do you agree with that, or do you think that nostalgia's not really that important, or maybe you think nostalgia can be got with 3D printing? I don't know.
Well, you can't print like the exact models. Like if you have one in mind that is your hill to die on, you can't find that 3D printing because that doesn't exist. Although I do know that they 3D print all of their current stuff in like prototype form, and I have a bounty out in case a GW person wants to let those files slip. But you can't like stuff like that. There's other designers that work in the same style of old school like fantasy or 40k. It's not going to be the exact stuff you're looking for, but they do have designers out there that is their wheelhouse, and they started 3D designing because that's their nostalgia. So it is something like old Hammer is available. It's just not going to be the exact old Hammer.
Well, for that, I guess most of us aren't even giving money to Games Workshop anyway, because you go into eBay and stuff, right? So Minding Bat says, the thing is, everybody knows Games Workshop stuff is expensive, but it still sells. Stuff is always listed as out of stock. I think his point there is wider point, is that even though I'm making a video like this on what would get me or you back into Warhammer 40k, there's still enough people in it that what does it matter? These people are still buying the kits. One pushback bit I will give to that point, though, is that sometimes we see things as out of stock because Games Workshop can't be arsed making them, right? There are a lot of old model kits that don't sell very well, so Games Workshop don't stock them, right? And so that then creates a sense of false rarity. It means that, they're all gone, I wish, and then eventually when the need or want for those model kits comes back, they will eventually release them very limited, and people come back and buy them again. So it's not always that it's so popular that it's run out, right? But I do take your point that sometimes it is. Sometimes it can be that, they're just gone.
Yeah, and I don't take this as I want to see the empire crumble. Like, I don't want to see Games Workshop go away, because 99% of people, when they get into this hobby, Games Workshop is what they see first and what gets them into the game. So, like, we're working on the people that are in for a while that want something else.
I mean, again, I get accused that all the time. Is like, you want Games Workshop to fail, dude. I want nothing less. I do not want Games Workshop to fail. I know a lot of good people who work there and work really hard. Do you know what I mean? I want them to do better. I don't want them to fail, right? We want them to do better. And for me, the things that need to change, I mean, just going on to the gaming side of things, you touched on the rules before. For me, that is a huge thing. The rules are a huge sticking point right now. They just keep changing, and I keep tabs of this. I've got a few people on the Discord, on the Exiled backers, who keep track of it for me, and they message me going, yeah, this has changed, this has also changed. And I get like an email every week with about 18, 19 small changes that have been made throughout. But the thing is, you can say that's only 18 or 19 small changes across the entire breadth of 40k, which isn't very much. But imagine being that army that had 4 or 5 changes in it that week. And you're like, okay, and then you bring your army to a tournament or to a store, and bang, your army's out of date. You now can't really play it. Games of 40k to me grind to an absolute fucking halt. They just, unless you've been in it for, again, we have confirmation bias, not confirmation bias. What is it? Survivor's bias? I don't know, but we have a lot of people out there who are very good at 40k, because 40k brings in people who are very good at maths. Very good at working out problems very quickly in their brains, right? Some of them may be autistic, but most of them are just very, very, very clever and can do this stuff. Not everybody's built that way. Normies like me definitely are not built that way, It takes us a long time to learn a new system. And I think a lot of people are imprisoned by knowing the Games Workshop system and looking at other systems like Breakpoint, like OPR and things like that, and going, I'm not starting all over again. I can't be bothered. It took me all this time to learn 40k. I don't want to go elsewhere, And for me, I'm like the opposite of that, right? 40k needs to come and get me and say, listen, you no longer need to have a headache to play this game. You no longer need to have a GED in, wargaming to actually play 40k. You sit down for an hour, maybe 2, learn the rules, and you're ready to go. There's a very good reason why we don't do many intro games at Games Workshop stores anymore. Because most Games Workshop managers don't know the fucking rules. Because why would they? They've got other things to do. They're running a business. They don't have time to know the rules. These poor dudes, right? I was one of them. This is an 8th edition. 8th edition was pretty simple. But still, I was one of the only GW stores in my area that ran intro games. Because I was the only manager who'd been working in a store with other people before, which basically meant I had the time to read over the rules, because my manager was like, no, you will be doing intro games, learn the rules. Even if you have to do it on your own time, learn the rules. And I did. Whereas with our local area, most managers were running a retail business. They did not have time to sit there and learn some new rules. So, I think that's a big thing. Go on, sorry, man.
I would say a lot of what. Okay, well, when I was playing 40k way back in the earlier editions, like we wanted to get into like Battlefront or Firestorm Armada or Flames of War, and it took a lot of effort to be able to like switch your brain out of Games Workshop mode to play those different games. And I think now, because the way they keep changing the rules so fast, you can't take any time off of Games Workshop rules, because you'll like fall off the lead lap of the rules and have no idea what's going on when you come back.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is the amount of people that I've seen get back into 40k and to be like, what is this? What is this? And Michigan Yankee just said, I watched the live round of 40k at a local store. The rule changes was cramping the style and weighing them down completely. Okay, cool. Van Grail says, we have been playing alternate heresy rules as fan rules for Badab War and other armies. That has been a blast. 10th edition is just awful. Then through other companies, true scaling Firstborn Marines looks way better. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Even Minimaker do that. Like their Marines are literally Primaris-sized Marines, and they look brilliant. They look absolutely fantastic. In fact, he was really unlucky because he released the Space Wolves on his website, and then literally the next day, Games Workshop did the Space Wolf reveal. But I would still say his are better, and much cheaper. So it shouldn't really matter either way. Yeah, Mr. Awesome says, I think one thing that isn't brought up is most of 40k books are poorly written. Some aren't bad, but the bulk of them are very forgettable. Are you talking lore books there? Because again, that's not something really OPR can compete with right now, although it is an expanding universe all the time, especially the sci-fi one. But I get what you mean. Like, not all of them are of the same standard. Yeah, fair enough. Chris says, Battletech has had a pretty much the same rules since I started in 1997. That's a brilliant point. And I know tons of people who love Battletech, I mean, it's spawned video games, board games, God knows where else. One thing I will say for Battletech is I'm not a fan of the models, really, but, like, apart from that, because I walk into my local Games Workshop store, I'm not in Games Workshop, my local hobby store, Just Play, we're doing a tournament there in June, and I walk in, and I'm like, okay, Battletech, I know that logo, I look over, I'm like, I'm not paying £40 for this. I'm sorry, like I'm just not paying like this. I'm not paying £40 for that. So I think in terms of here's one other point that I wanted to bring up to you, Fitz. Where else is there to go apart from 3D printing? This is a big issue, right? Because Games Workshop charge a lot of money for their models, but that also means instead of like playing to the gallery and saying, "Hey guys, we're going to sell our models at that cost, right? Really, really cheap. We'll make our money." Other companies seem to be just taking the piss, kind of like Games Workshop are. There was a war game that came out or was revealed called I think it's called Corvus War Game, Corvus Wargaming or whatever it was called, and the price of models was ridiculous. It was more than Games Workshop they were charging for these models, and they didn't look great. They looked okay, Battletech is another one, right? For what you get out of the models. What, £30-40 for a set of three? Go away! No, that's ridiculous, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing going on right now. Like I was at Adepticon a few weeks ago over in Milwaukee, and I was walking around the vendor hall, and it seems like GW, instead of everyone looking at GW and thinking, okay, we can cut our prices to like half of what they do to get people into our game, they look at their prices and say, no, if they're doing it, then we can do it too. And they're sitting at like 70, 80, 90% of what GW prices are, or some of the more designers that think they're more specialty. They'll like shoot themselves up to like $100 a model because there are some people that will pay it. People that just don't understand, I guess.
One thing, a friend of mine, I won't name him, but he does have his own war game, right? And I've been talking to him about writing war games and things. And what he said to me is that some of us don't want to be the size of Games Workshop. And when I asked him what he meant by that, he said, I want to make my money, but if I make a rule like a rule set and a pricing model that is really competitive and undercuts Games Workshop, we may grow to a point that I'm not comfortable with and I can't meet, and it would be so much stress. All I want to do is sell cool models. And the way I keep it nice and low, and I keep the orders coming in at a nice pace, but one I can manage, is by making sure that only people with a good amount of money can afford my models. And I thought that was really interesting. That just
yeah, I guess that's a way to look at it. If you want to keep your business small, but at that point, if you're spending that much on models, should be a very dedicated customer base. Mm-hmm. I can see that as a business strategy.
To be fair, it's kind of similar to how I am with the channel, though. Like, I've always said 40,000 subscribers is what I want, right? And I don't really want to go above that. It'd be great if it did, but, like, I would then lose touch with a lot of my fans, right? A lot of the guys in chat right now, I know their names. Some of them I know their real names, even though they have their their screen name there. You know what I mean? And I would lose that if I went much bigger than 40k subscribers. So I get that sentiment of it becomes unmanageable once you start going over there. But I do think that the rest of the industry is looking at Games Workshop and saying, okay, if Games Workshop are charging like £35, call it, you know, $50, $60 for 10 Space Marines, that means we can do similar. That means we can. That is what we should be aiming for, even if our models aren't on the same level. Which is why I think 3D printing is primed to pretty much blow the side out of a lot of these companies. And here's the thing. With companies doing that, Games Workshop aren't going to be affected by 3D printing. I'm sorry. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think they will pivot into 3D printing, and they'll 3D print their own stuff. And you know, you may see a price come down. You may do. You may have to, because if there are companies like Minimaker doing similar models that are much better quality for cheaper, sorry, no amount of brand loyalty will get you past that. People will eventually go, well, why should I do that? You know, I've got this one over here. The companies who will get hurt are the smaller companies. It's a smaller company, and I don't mean people like Minimaker. I mean people like, you know, the guys who make the smaller war games. You know, the guys who want to make a dent in the industry. They are going to get hammered by 3D printing because no one's going to buy the models. You're like, well, I can go on Minimaker and get the same model for a quarter of the price. You know, like, I've got no brand loyalty to you. You're not Games Workshop. I don't have the. Somebody brought, I think it was Warvane before, brought up, you know, or maybe it wasn't, who brought up the nostalgia, right? You don't have that nostalgia loyalty for new companies. Games Workshop have that in the bank. Newer companies don't. So if you have an alternative out there to go and buy your models, you'll go there, right?
Right. Yeah. If it's something that you grew up with and you know, I have I have a file that I have every white dwarf ever made, and I was going back through last night while I was having a D&D game where I wasn't really paying attention to stuff, and I was going through old white dwarfs, and I was getting nostalgia for something I didn't even experience.
Yeah.
Like GW back in like 1987. Mm-hmm. So that's just such a powerful thing that people that look at that, they're going to be loyal to Games Workshop. Mm-hmm. And that's just something you can't fight against it. And it's just these smaller companies, you know, they're just not going to have that.
Minding Bat says, on this point, I think Trench Crusade is working around it. Dude, I'm not sure. I think they would be one of the ones who would get battered. Because you can't really, you know, Space Marines are a very marketable and copyrighted thing, you know. Try copywriting Steampunk Crusading Knight. See how far you get. You know,
another thing,
you know.
Yeah, another thing too is that Trench Crusade, honestly, they're kind of late to the party on the whole aesthetic thing.
Yeah.
Because I just did a video, was it 2 weeks ago, where I did, you know, Trench Crusade and OPR. Not because I don't like Trench Crusade, I just like playing bigger games with whole armies, and Trench Crusade's kind of a skirmish thing. So I put the Trench Crusade stuff into OPR, and I found models out there from a company called Beastarian Minis that are the right kind of weird to put into that setting. I mean, you can't copyright dude with gas mask with like M1 rifle. It's out there. You just got to go look for it.
Mining Bat says, yeah, that their model is based on 3D printing. It is, but their pricing isn't. Their pricing is their pricing. And if they decide to go down Games Workshop route, which they may well do, and is their right to do, then they may be facing some difficulties in the near future. Mining Bat says, I think the biggest issue with 40k at the moment is the difficulty in knowing what the rules are at any one time. I think if they streamlined the app and changed their policy and codexes, and then he cuts off. So I think he's got into. Then he goes into Trench Crusade. Okay, so
right.
He's got a point. He's got a point there. You know, like there is and somebody else said something as well. Damned Legion said 10 rubric Marines, 120 New Zealand dollars for 10.
Right. Yeah, that's just it's ridiculous is the word I'm looking for there.
That's stupid. How are you even into the hobby at that point? No wonder channels like Outer Circle exist, when it's just like, we need to look for alternatives. This is stupid. Like, this is, I don't know, man.
Right, and not even the models themselves. Like, just looking at the rules, every edition you got to buy like $100 book or however much the rule books are now, and like a $60 codex for your army.
Mm-hmm. Damn Legion says the last miniatures I bought was a box of War Dogs for 179 New Zealand dollars, and those were my Xmas presents. Oh my god. Oh my god. Jim DePool says, if Games Workshop prices were 10 models for $30 use, I'd be in there every week buying a kit. Instead, I just look at them and leave. That's another really good point, right? I mean, people have been saying, and when somebody said this before, I sort of scoffed. I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Because when I asked the question before, what would bring you back to Games Workshop, people kept saying, price decrease. Give me a price decrease and I'll come back, right? That kind of a thing. And I was like, that's stupid. We know that's not going to happen, right? That just is not going to happen. But the more I think about it, the more we have to be reaching a terminal velocity at some point. That there has to be a point where people say, "What the fuck is this? Why am I spending $180 for one unit of 10 Rubik Marines? Why am I? What is going on? Like
I remember when I was younger, I used to, like, when I was in high school, I used to mow lawns on the weekend whenever it wasn't, football season and all that. I'd go out there, mow some lawns, make like, $30-40 a weekend, and then I could go to GW on the weekend, and I could buy like a box of Tactical Marines for $20. Yeah, I'm not that old. I'm only 40 years old. That was not that long ago, guys.
Mm-hmm. Same. I guess. Again, it's literally... Somebody said... Who said that? Mr. Awesome said, yes, because tabletops are a dying breed, unfortunately. Maybe, but if as a company you're going down the route of, okay, we're doing tournaments, we're doing competitive play, that's the way we're going, charging this much for your models, there is a limit to how much people are going to be able to pay or want to pay, you know what I mean? Rules are one thing. Rules are inexcusable, right? Rules can be changed overnight. So that's something I'm not willing to take Games Workshop side on at all. Rules and prices are the two
or they can change
things.
Before you even get them.
Or they change before you get the book home. Yeah, the rules and prices are things that need to change, but as Matthias just says, neither will happen, right? I can't see Games Workshop doing a price decrease. The only thing that I can ever see them triggering that on is if other companies come along that do similar things for even cheaper than what 3D printing is now. But I'll be honest with you, about 4 years ago, I was talking about 3D printing and saying, look, it's going to be a long time before we get to the stage where we're doing models that are like Games Workshop. But even 4 years ago, the quality was different. It really was. Like, the quality was not there that much, compared to Primaris Marines. Primaris Marines was supposed to be the, Games Workshop saying, well, you can't do this, can you? And yeah, they can now, actually. And it's only been 4 or 5 years since that was the case. Right? There's been a definite change here.
Yeah, and instead of the monopose models, we can take those models that you have and we can put them into 3D rendering software. We can position them any way we want. So if we have 100 Marines, they're all different.
Chris says, I bought my original Land Raider Crusader, brilliant tank by the way, for $55 in 2002-ish. And that, to be fair, $55 was a lot of money in 2002. But it's still only equivalent to what, $60, $70, something like that now? Something like that? I don't know.
Something like that, yeah. And remember they had the metal storm bolters on the side of the bolter arrays that would never stay on the model.
Well, they had, I swear, we built them once where the actual opening hatch at the front would open on its own. If you pulled the top hatch down, the top one would lever upwards with it. There was a gear inside, or like a little pulley system inside that came with it. I was like, dude, you would never get that now. You'd never get that now. That was genius, the way that they did that. It was like, that's so cool. You can actually build it in a way where just pulling that front bit down will like open it up at the front. I do that all the time. I was such a kid. I was like in my 20s, and I'd be like, I had one from back in the day. Still, it's on the thing behind me. I can't, I love it. And Mr. Awesome says, I don't like to be a downer, but I can't deny what I'm seeing. Dude, that's my channel in a nutshell. I don't want to be a downer, but I can't deny what I'm seeing. That's literally like the channel in a nutshell. Damned Legion says, Knight Dominus Tyrant, 333 New Zealand dollars, and Magnus, the Primarch, 320. Lucky I have some generous family. You must have a generous family to be getting that kind of
Oh yeah. There's no chance. My family would look at that and then be like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah, dude, our wives would do that. Like literally.
I like, she's been walking through the room, and I had up the Gatebreaker Gargant on the screen when I was talking about how much it was. She looks at me and goes, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm very, very lucky, right? So, my missus is very supportive of my hobby, mainly because, talking about it brings in money into the house, so she does not suddenly have a leg to stand on, really. But she also is very understanding of the time I take to paint my models and to get things doing. She couldn't even stomach this, I couldn't go to her and say, "Look at this Devastator squad." Let me just say, these old-ass Marines are still £40 for 5 models. Technically 6 if you want the Cherub there as well. It's £40 for, like, old-ass squatty Marines that aren't going to be... There's already a Primaris equivalent to these dudes, so these aren't going to be discontinued anytime soon. There's somebody going to be buying them, I just
looked on the American side. It's $62.50.
Oh, Jesus. No, again, like... I get what people are saying. I get what people are saying. People are saying, yeah, the prices need to come down. That's what would get me back. But I have to come to the conclusion, the only way it would ever come down is if another company that is a large 3D printing company, which is why I'm praying for the success of things like Trench Crusade, because if we get things like that on the go and they become a market share, that would mean Games Workshop have to think twice, right? Right now, people say to me all the time, well, Games Workshop have too big of a market share. No, motherfucker. Games Workshop are the market. That's what we're saying. Everybody else's percentage is so tiny. Games Workshop are the market. There isn't a market, right? This isn't Coca-Cola and Pepsi. This is. Imagine Coca-Cola and Pepsi were combined into a single company. That's this, and compare them to the rest of the drink world. That's who we're dealing with, right? And delete Red Bull. So delete Red Bull, combine Pepsi and Coke. That's the size of Games Workshop compared to everybody else. There isn't a market, right? Yeah. Without them, and they set the terms.
Yeah, and then we were harping on prices, but a lot of the stuff GW's done the last couple of years, as far as their rules, as far as the legends lists, things that they just take out of the game, or they change them in such a way that you're sitting there looking at models you paid this exorbitant amount of money for that you've just wasted because you're not allowed to use them in competitive play. And even though everyone says just play casually, whenever you walk into a store, you're gonna find competitive players. If you want to do like casual play, you have to set that up beforehand. But if you walk into a store, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a competitive game using the most current rule set. It turns into a treadmill of bad decisions that they've made.
I think when you see the sheer amount of grey plastic you've come across as well, like one thing I will say for one-page rules and games like it, I played many games. I've never come across a grey plastic army once. Not once. That they've all been projects. They've all been pieces of passion that have been thrown on the tabletop. Why? Because the guys have had the money and the skill and the wherewithal to go out and do that. You know what I mean? Like they've been saying, okay, I want this Orc army or this Grey Knight army, and because of the prices are lower, they've been able to really express themselves and mix and match different sets to create really cool things. And once you've created something really cool, you want to paint it and make it look as good as possible, right? If you get something bog standard Games Workshop out of a box, you think, okay, well, I spent a lot of money on this, but I only really want it for the tournament. Spray it, get it on the table. I've seen cheeky people do like, what you need? I need 3 colors. Okay, spray it black, red helmet, kind of, and a yellow hand. Done. That kind of a thing. You see that all the time at Games Workshop style tournaments. You don't see it in OPR. And I've never seen it, and I've seen one game of Trench Crusade played in front of me in my life, so don't get me, But that game was like, these dudes have spent so much time on their project, you could just see it, and they weren't really playing the game. They were playing the game, but but they were just kind of like putting their models in cool poses and then rolling some dice on the side. These are dudes who love models, and love what they represent. You don't get that feeling of 40k anymore. It used to be, but I just don't feel it, and that's something that would need to change for me to come back. And again, I can't see it. I just can't. I love 40k, I love Warhammer, I love Games Workshop, but I can't see myself spending this amount of money on toy soldiers. Just can't. Maybe one a month, maybe a small box a month. I mean, and that's how I'm doing the Exiled Blades here for the tournament in June. Slowly but surely. But I don't have the money to go and say, let's just go out and get an army. Let's just go and do this.
Yeah, because a lot of like what they do is they generate a lot of sales through people chasing metas, and it just leaves everyone holding the bag with their gray models. Like a big key point, a couple of key points. How I just like fell off with 40k was remember when the orc buggy nerf happened? Mm-hmm. That was a big one. Like I had bought Speed Freak boxes the years before when they came out, and then I was like, oh look, I got buggies, so I can finish these up and then play them because they're really strong. Just for the GW to come out and say, oh no, you're only allowed to have 3 in your entire army.
Yeah, I think we've got who just said Scum Goblin says the only reason I bought a printer was the price. I'm in Scotland, so the prices aren't the worst, but they're getting there. Now in my play group of 2. Now in my play group, 2 of us have printers, 1 resin, and 1 filament. That's a good place to be, yeah. Mr. Awesome says, I wish they would do a worldwide tournament again. Oh, interesting, okay. Unless they change the result of it at the 11th hour like they did last time. Michigan Yankee...
remember the last...
Go on, sorry.
Say the last one, they had to say the Tyranids won because we were getting very suspicious of them changing the rules.
Yeah. Damned Legion says, I wanted a Legion as a Damned army when I started playing at the beginning of 9th, but they were legends and not good anymore, so I picked Deathwatch and Thousand Suns instead. Pretty much. Okay, fair enough. I think your point there is stop nuking people out of the game. That is one huge thing that keeps coming up, is that people can't really trust Games Workshop to even give them a codex in an edition of their flagship game. It's the mind boggles. Like, how do you have...
Yep.
Your flagship game, and you're sitting there all the time going, I've got a Chaos Demon army, I don't want to play Age of Sigmar, they're all on circle bases, I love playing demons in 40k. Okay, well here's the index. Great. Can I have a codex? No. Then why would you play this game? Then why would you bother?
Right. Or even like, hey, I like Beastmen in Age of Sigmar. Oh look, the whole army is just gone. Now you have to put them back on square bases.
It's like, oh, they're just gone. They're gone. Yeah, that's it's literally that South Park episode where Kyle's putting money into a bank, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Like literally every time. Like you're just like, okay, well, there's my enjoyment. I may as well go play, whatever now. But that is a really good point of what's keeping people from coming back. And by the way, I want people back in 40k. I want these changes to come in. I want to play Warhammer 40,000 as my main game. I can't. Why? Because I have a fucking job. I'm sorry. I already have a job, Games Workshop. I'm not learning your reams of rules. And the amount of people I know through what I do who go to tournaments and they tell me, if you don't know at least you need to know your own codex back to front. We all know that, right? It is a thing. But unless you know a good other 5 or 6 codexes pretty well, you're not getting anywhere near the upper echelons of that tournament, if it's a serious tournament, if it's a good one, right? You need to know. And even then, there'll be events in normal stores where it's like that too, where, you need to know, I need to know what my army does, but also what your army does. And his army over there too. To actually make games competitive. Not to win the tournament, but to make them competitive. I need to know your rules as well as mine. No, I like to be... A really well-balanced game to me means... I've got a friend, Matt, who plays Admech. God bless him, because they were terrible at the start of the edition. But what he doesn't really... He knows his rules, but not insanely well. So we always have a good game, because, I know my rules pretty well. He knows his rules pretty well. But I don't know how to really min-max them enough to really pound his ass. And same with him and me, right? So... what happens is I play my game and I get pleasantly surprised by things his army can do. It's kind of like playing against a computer game, right? Where the whole mission is about making you enjoy yourself, and you need to win to progress the game, obviously, but you're enjoying yourself first. That's what it's supposed to be like. I'm supposed to know about 2% of what your army does. Do you know what I mean? If that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm supposed to be surprised by the rest. It gives me a bloody nose, but I can still play the game and have fun. I think we're losing that a lot with 40k.
Yeah, a lot of it now is that, like, I watch a lot of YouTube while I'm painting stuff every night, so I have heard a lot of the rules from 40k that I just don't know what they are anymore. Like, people talking the rules, I'm like, it sounds like a different language. And then just, I get lost in that. And just the amount of gotchas in the game now, like every army has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different detachments. Each one of those detachments has like 6 or 12 stratagems they could run, and they could just pull out at any time. And if you don't know what your opponent has, the gotchas in 40k now are just out of this world ridiculous.
I think a lot of people are saying they went around the historic route, like a Kriegsman saying that, right? They went to historical wargaming after a while. Damned Legion says, I'm still a little bit salty about Games Workshop squatting a Death Watch into agents and then giving a Codex and no new Marines and Legends Proteus kill team. Where's Death Watch's new miniatures? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I get that. Who mentioned something about the Death Guard Codex? Yeah, Warvane says, the only thing that makes me sad is I want my army to match, and half is Games Workshop, but I am adding third-party stuff out of necessity. He also says, my Death Guard Codex from 9th edition was outdated, and we only have one detachment for over a year now. Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. That is one other thing that people have said about what would get them back to wargaming, not wargaming, 40k in general, is every single edition can't be over until everybody has a codex and the game is nicely balanced for a year or two. Once you get to that point, you let it sit for a year or two, then you start the rumblings of the next edition. But this breakneck speed of we need a new edition so often and so much that armies start getting left behind. You start losing Chaos Demons, you start losing Death Watch, they start getting folded into other people because it is what it is.
The breakneck speed of the 3-year edition cycle that they're sticking to, there's always going to be one or two armies that are left at the end just holding the bag. Like, what was it, the Imperial Guard Codex, I think it was 9th, that just kind of lasted for 2 months and then just poof, disappeared.
I think the usual, the gap between, so I've just researched this, so the Rogue Trader, the 2nd edition, was 6 years. No, 6 years, alright? So that was 1997 to 1993. 2nd edition to 3rd edition was another 6 years, but it was 5-ish, but mainly 6 years. 1993 to 1998, and 09. 3rd edition was 1998-99 to 2004. 4th edition, 6 years. So we've got three edition changes to 6 years. Right, now in 4th edition. 4th edition, this is when things start to go down a little bit. We have 4 years from 2004 to 2008 for 5th edition. And that's the first time I really, as a kid, noticed a lot of people complaining. They said 4 years was not enough time. It's not enough time at all. 5th edition, 4 years. Now, 6th edition to 7th edition, 2 years. Now, does anybody remember what Games Workshop were like in 2012 to 2014? I would argue one of the worst companies on planet Earth.
Everything was on fire.
Yes, the whole place on fire. And ironically, the one thing that saved Games Workshop, and I know because I was there for the end of this, was Horus Heresy. Those 2 box sets saved Games Workshop. And they were the box sets that were shit on by management all the time. No one's going to buy that. Dude, they saved the company. Like, Betrayal at Calth and Prospero saved the fucking company. I'm telling you now. So 6th edition, 7th edition, 2 years. 7th edition to 8th edition, another 3 years. And this is where my time in the company comes in. So 3 years. Again, not a long time, but every single edition since then has been 3 years just. And I mean just. The minute it scrapes over to 3 years, it's done, right? But the problem is, people say, well, 3 years, they're sticking to that now, that's great. What people fail to realise is, if you have a 3-year timeline between editions, right? Do you really think you have your codexes for those 3 years? You don't, right? You have your codexes for maybe a year in a 3-year cycle. Maybe. Most of us have our finished codexes for a year. And even then, they'll be getting FAQs and FAQs and FAQs all the time. And then you go to, when do they start rumbling about the next edition? Well, that's already started now, right? We're still a year out. We're in 2025. We are 2 years into the current edition, and they're already starting to talk about, 11th edition. Yes. When's that gonna be coming? Oh, 2026. We're looking at 2026, right? So, why? Here's my point. If we don't already have our codexes now, what would be the point in buying one? Because we know we're going to have it for what, 3 months, 4 months. I was at Games Workshop when they brought out the Imperial Agents Codex at the end of 7th edition, and people bought it, and then literally 8th edition came out a couple of months later. It's like, well, why did you sell me this? You knew it was going to be useless. I want my money back, right? The amount of returns we had to do for that.
The big thing too that most people gloss over when they talk about edition changes is the only one that really counts is from 7th to 8th, because all the way from 3rd edition until the end of 7th edition, all of those codexes, whenever there was an edition change, didn't get invalidated. They just kept rolling.
Yeah.
Like if you had a Dark Eldar Codex from what was the first one? It was like one of the first ones in like 1999 until they updated it in like 2007. That was the same book the whole way.
Yeah. It literally, you could play Black Templars from 3rd in 6th and be fine. You wouldn't really. There'd be a few things you're missing, but you could still compete. You'd do well, right? That's such a good point. The 7th to 8th was a sea change, and at the time. I will do a video on this, by the way, but I'm going to say it now anyway. At the time, working in Games Workshop, it was such a breath of fresh air because it was so easy to teach. And we got so many customers through the door. It was great seeing those green numbers come in your store and seeing your store doing really well. But I can't deny, since it's come out, it's kind of been, in terms of the health of the game, a net negative at the moment. Even though I really liked 8th, it's been a net negative because now every single edition has these sweeping seismic changes that completely invalidate any rule set you've got before. Buy it all again, scrub. Buy it all again. Because that's the model.
They always come through. They come through and they introduce like one more stat or something where it does invalidate stuff before. Where if they just did at the 8th edition, it was the break point, you have indexes, and then you just start rolling again from there like you did from 3rd to 7th. It would be a whole lot different talking point whenever we bring up the rules. But now it's like every 3 years, whatever you had, just walk outside and burn it because you can't use it anymore.
I mean, and this is the final point I want to make on that, and that's what is driving people away, and the reason why they're not coming back is this has kind of turned into a video on why aren't you coming back rather than what would get you back. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, it is, all you need to do is reverse what we're saying, and you get what would bring people back. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So, in terms of like edition cycles, again, as I've said before, 10th edition came out in 2023. Okay. So then we start getting codexes, all right? So now we're nearly midway through 2025. Oh my god, that's scary. But we're like 2 months away from midway through 2025. And, 11th edition is on the horizon. Like, they're going to start, towards Christmas, they will start teasing it, right? It's going to start, leaks are going to start coming out about 11th edition. And it will be another seismic change again, then invalidate all of your codexes. That your lifespan in this game right now for your army is at best 18 months, at best, and even then you've got an old codex, which means the newer codexes beat the living shit out of yours because of codex creep. Okay, so at best you've got 18 months, at worst you've got 3 months for the same price. 6 years from 1st to 2nd, and 2nd to 3rd, and 3rd to 4th. was just barely enough to me. For me. Like, I think that's the sweet spot. Every edition should be 6 years. And if you screw up your rules to the point that you need to completely throw them out every 3 years, that is willful ignorance, and you know what you're doing at that point. You're doing it because it's a business model, and it makes you money, rather than being for the health of the game. And I think that's one of the main things that's keeping people from coming back to 40k. Just being honest.
Yeah.
You know.
A lot of like if I could break it down to say what would bring me back to 40k. First, I would always say lower the prices, but we both know that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
Everyone in the chat knows it's not going to happen. But if you brought the codex structure back, and if you brought the creativity back into 40k, like they had in the past, like, do you remember? God, I'm saying like a lot. Do you remember the Space Marine Codex where you could choose your own chapter traits?
Yes.
Or the Chaos Marine Codex, I think it was 4.5, where you had all the legions in there, and there was just massive pages of equipment and war gear that you could buy for them. If you brought stuff back like that, I'd be in.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Or like the, I remember you build your own chapter master was in one, like your own warlord, where it was. It was brilliant. It was like a, I think that was in White Dwarf, actually. It was like build your own chapter master, and the different rules you can take and things like that from, and they did it actually in White Dwarf, which is brilliant. You know, absolutely loved it. But yeah, I think we pretty much covered what we needed to cover there. So, we're gonna go do some Raven Guard lore now. So you can stick around for that, Fitz, if you want. But for now, say goodbye to the lovely people on YouTube. Chat, say goodbye.
Yeah, bye everybody. Again, I'm warbossfitz. If you want to check out OPR action, come over to warbossfitz on YouTube, and I've run every army for the game, and we're going around for the second time. So if you got any questions, just swing by, take a look.
Really good resource for OPR. It's really helped me out in putting the in actually designing missions. Actually, your channel for putting together for Exile Fest. So that's really, really cool. But thank you very much, guys. I will speak to you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. So see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.